laborers. Now, let's understand that at this time in Palestine, around September or the middle of September is the season for harvest of grapes. So, grapes ripen around this season, around the middle of September, and so the landowners or the owners need to be watchful. They need to harvest their grapes before the start of the rainy season. Otherwise, when rain starts, and they have not harvested their grapes, or they have not finished harvesting the grapes, then they will be at a terrible loss. So, this landowner, very early, first hour in the morning, at 6 o'clock in the morning, he went out. He went to the marketplace. Now, the marketplace is the place where people looking for a job, or the laborers, they stay there and wait for the employers or for anyone who would hire them for work. This is a kind of sort of maybe the counterpart for our present day is like a placement agency, a recruitment agency. But the marketplace, that's where people go in order to get a job or to wait for anybody who would hire them. So the landowner goes out and he goes to the marketplace to hire laborers. And as the gospel says, there is this negotiation. The first batch negotiated. Now in the Greek original, it says hammered out. The agreement was hammered out. So there was bargaining. They have to make bargain, and they made demands, conditions. This first group of workers, okay, we will work, but on these conditions. We want this, we want that. This will be our conditions. And after a while, after negotiating, an agreement was hammered out. For how much? They will be paid an equivalent of the day's wage, 1 denarius for 1 day of work. Now, let's just say the 1 denarius is the equivalent of 1 day wage, or the minimum wage per day. At present here in our country, at the NCR, National Capital Region, I think, the present minimum wage per day is something like 495 or around 500, or let's say 500 pesos per day. That's the minimum wage of workers or laborers. Also, this first batch of workers, they agreed with the landowner that they will be paid 500 pesos for 1 day work. So off they went to the vineyard. But after a while, at around 9 o'clock in the morning, the landowner went out again. He went to the marketplace to get more workers for his vineyard. And then, at around 12 o'clock, he did the same. He recruited, or he hired more servants to work for his vineyard. Maybe he was sensing that, he was observing that the sky is getting dark, and rain might soon come, and he needs to finish the harvest of his grapes. And I would also suppose or suspect that this might be a Friday, so the following day will be Sabbath, and they could not work. And what about if the harvest is not finished, and when Sabbath came, or when Sabbath comes, then it will be to his loss, because nobody will work to harvest the grapes. So, at around 3 o'clock again in the afternoon, the landowner went out again. He did the same. He hired more laborers. And at 5 o'clock, imagine, 5 o'clock, the day was supposed or is supposed to end at 6 o'clock in the evening. But he went out again, and then he still found some people, some workers there in the marketplace. And he said to them, "Why are you still here? Why are you idle? Standing here idle?" And these people said, "Because no one has hired us." And he said, "Go, you go also into my vineyard. Go also into my vineyard." Now, there is only 1 hour to work for these late comers or these late workers. But the landowner said, "You go also," he said to them, "and I will do what is right for you." So now they all went, and we could just suppose that they did their work well, as expected by the landowner. And when it was time, at 6 o'clock or around at around 6 o'clock, the landowner came to pay them their day's wages. He said to the foreman or to the katiwala, "Call the laborers and pay them their daily wage, starting with the last, then to the first." And so all the laborers came. They lined up to receive their wages. The first, the last. Matthew says at the beginning, those who are first will be last, and the last will be first. Now, in chapter 20, the present parable ends. The last will be first, and the first will be last. So, the katiwala paid, starting with those who were hired at 5 o'clock. And the same thing with those who were hired at 3 o'clock, then those who were hired at 12 o'clock, those who were hired at 9 o'clock. And you could just imagine how jubilant they must have been. Those who worked starting from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock for only 1 hour got 500 pesos, or the minimum wage for 1 day. The same thing with the rest. And they were just surprised. How could this be? I only work for 1 hour, but I got 500. So, if you were in that situation, would you complain? No, they did not complain. They were just so happy. They were thankful to the landowner. But here comes the first batch of laborers, thinking that since those who work for only 1 hour got 500, one denarius. The same thing with those at 3 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Maybe we will get more than what they receive, because we work all day long under the heat of the sun. They were expecting more. They were expecting more from the landowner, a higher pay. But to their surprise, they also received 1 denarius. They also received 500 pesos, or the day's minimum wage. And you could imagine their reaction. They grumbled. They complained. This is unfair. You heard that expression? It's unfair. Yes, it is unfair. From our human point of view, you might say, oh, those advocates of maybe workers' rights will say, that's against the workers' rights. It's unfair. It's labor injustice. Well, that is how we view it. They said, why are we receiving the same? Those who work for only 1 hour, you give them an equivalent of a day's minimum wage? Why? This is very unfair. Why did you treat them like us? Why did you make them like us? That's the reaction. You made them equal to us. Does that sound familiar? You made them equal to us. There's one thing that perhaps we often forget. When we covet what others get, then our eyes become envious. This is what the landowner said. What if I wish to give this last one the same as you? Am I not free to do so as I wish with my own money? Are you envious because I am generous? We cannot be at peace if we always covet and we always want to compete with our fellow men, even with our fellow workers. They said, why did you treat them like us? You made them equal to us. So, sometimes when we reflect on this, instead of thinking or instead of saying, praise God, thank God, they got more than enough that I expected. Thank God that they are now well off. Thank God that, praise the Lord, that they can now live a more decent life. So they don't have to depend on me, or they don't have to be asking for help from others. They will not be a burden to me anymore, because more or less they are now well off. Instead of being happy for those who have succeeded in life more than we have, we grumble. We desire what is given to them. We desire because we want it for us. We want them. We do not want them to be equal with us. We do not want them to receive the same blessing as we do. Now, we think that, oh, I am much better than they. I deserve more because I work hard. I labored for this. It should remind us of what Yahweh told Israel. You shall remember that when you reach the land of promise, beware. And when you become successful in your life, when you have settled, and when you have become successful, beware lest you say to yourselves, all this success we have now comes from our hard labor. What we have achieved so far is because of our strength. And Yahweh reminded them of that. Lest you say to yourselves that it is because of our prowess, our strength, our perseverance, our hard work that we have attained this success. Remember, it is the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of nothingness, and have given you this land rich. That's what we do. We always think in terms of rewards based on what we have done, based on our superiority, based on our importance and position in society. So, what's the lesson that we get here? Lesson 1. Rewards are not based on the length of service, or rewards are not based on your possessions. Rewards are not based on your status. If God is sovereign in giving rewards. That's what the landowner said. Am I not free to do as I wish with my own money? Are you envious because I am a generous man or landowner? Now, let's go back to the first batch of workers. They were able to strike a contract, an agreement with the land owner, 1 denarius for a day's work. And as I said, the contract was hammered out. So the first group, how did they approach the landowner, or how do you think the negotiation went through? Maybe they said, okay, Lord, Master, this is what I will do. This is what we will do. Yes, but this is our demand. This is our condition. The same thing with us or with many of us. We are just like the first group. Lord, this is what I will do. And I will do this, I will do that, and after that, after 1 month, or for a while, I expect you to give me in return, well, whatever you want, you ask from the Lord. And you expect Him to give you in return. I will go to church every Sunday, I will donate to the church, I will give my tithe, I will give my pledge faithfully, that you will reward me with. There is always that something that we expect God will do in return for the good works that we are doing. Now, we make that contract with God. But look at the rest of the workers. Those who were hired at 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, at 5 o'clock, there was no contract. There was no agreement. They were just happy that the landowner saw them, and the landowner hired them, gave them the chance to work for his vineyard. They were just grateful. They were given a chance to earn for their daily bread. They were just grateful that they could have something for their family when they go home. Mayroong pambili pang baon ng mga anak sa kinaumagahan, pambili ng bigas o pambili ng ulam sa kinabukasan. They were just happy. So they did not make any demand because they were there looking for work and waiting for somebody to hire them. They were simply happy that even in the last hour, their master took them in. Imagine, only 1 hour is left to work. Who would want to work for only 1 hour? If your standard is the capitalist standard. But that is not how the grace of God operates. God always gives His best to those who leave the choice to Him. That's another lesson we learn from this parable. The first worker said, okay, we got what we want. But what about those who work less? Kami nagtiis ng init at hirap sa maghapon. Sila 1 oras, 3 oras lang. And then, you make them like us. You treat them equal to us or like us. That's the grace of God. It is overflowing. We did not expect. The rest of the workers did not expect that they will be rewarded, that they will receive the same amount of minimum wage. They were simply happy. They were invited to work. They were given the chance to work in the vineyard. They were there at the marketplace. Now, be where the master goes. Where would you be? Where would you want to be? If you want to work in the vineyard of the Lord. Would you want to be in the computer shop playing those computer games? Or would you rather be in the cockpit enjoying the cockfight? Would you expect the master to go there to look for laborers in his vineyard? Would you expect the master to go to a hotel to look for laborers to work in his vineyard? Or at the Manila Hotel, will he go there to work for workers? Be where the master goes. Look for jobs. You want to where he goes. Grace, the grace of God is overflowing. And it is the grace of God that sustains us. Hindi matatawaran. And it is not that we receive the abundance of God's grace because of our righteousness. God does not reward us because we are hard working. God does not reward because you have served Him for in the ministry maybe for 20 years, 50 years. You know, sometimes I when I think of this, you know, my eyes also gets envy. You know, when one comes to think of it, you know, sometimes you get naughty. My mind gets naughty, and I say, "What? So and so is now a bishop. He's only been a priest for 15 years. I have been a priest for 30 years, 40 years. How come? That's unfair. How come they made him a bishop and not me? When I have served the ministry, I have been in the church for 40 years, for 50 years. But they have been in the ministry for 10, 15 years. But that's not how God gives His grace. That's not God. How God makes us worthy. In fact, we are not even worthy at all. But by the grace of God, we don't deserve nothing. But by the grace of God. So, think of St. Paul. It was the same attitude that Paul had with the rich young ruler. Oh, I have done. No, I have observed your laws since I was still from my youth. I have observed those laws. I have observed the 625 Jewish laws. I have obeyed them until now. So what more do I need? How come I could not still enter the kingdom of heaven and inherit the kingdom you prepared? That's what the rich young ruler was arguing with Jesus. And Paul said to the Pharisees, I became a Pharisee. No one could contest me. I was the best. Paul was very proud. But he said, all these things, later on Paul said, all these things I considered as rubbish, as trash. All these things are nothing except for knowing Christ Jesus as Lord, my Lord. For the grace of God strengthens me. Where sin abounds, grace abounds the more. Our justification is not the fruit of what we do or what we have done. We are justified not because of our possession, not because of what we have accomplished, not because we have been serving the church or the ministry for these so many years, Our justification comes from the love of God, from the grace of God. And it is grace. Grace, Grace, which means God's redemption at Christ's expense. God's redemption at Christ's expense. You know, I think if I would say the rest of the workers, those who were hired from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock, if I were to choose a theme song for them, that would be that beautiful hymn, Trust and Obey. Trust and obey. For there is no other way to be happy with Jesus but to trust and obey. God's reward. God is sovereign, and He is not just kind, He is more than kind. His generosity is more than His being equal or just. His generosity extends beyond measure. And He gives, He is even more generous. He gives more than what we expect if we leave the choice to Him. Let Him decide for what is best for you. Let Him decide for what you deserve. Because no matter how hard we work, no matter how much we try, we will never deserve the grace of God, except if we just leave the choice to Him. Just as I am. That beautiful hymn. When the Master comes to the marketplace and there He finds us, and He asks us to go into His vineyard, let us go, just as we are, just as I am, with nothing, without one plea. And when we leave the rest to Him, when we leave the choice what is best for us, we will come home with the abundance of His mercies, more than what we deserve, more than what we expect. The first will be last, and the last will be first. Amen.